The environmental movement is, I think, a genuine movement. It involves a lot of folks who care about polar bears, but will never visit the Arctic, tries to save parts of the planet, valuable ecosystems on the bottom of the ocean that they have no particular self-interest in, as well as a whole group of people that are trying to stop a nuclear power plant from going into their neighborhood or a toxic waste dump from being built next to their children's school. It's a set of values. I think over time, the basic values are shared by an ever larger number of people. But because there are less confrontations, less press-worthy events, fewer press-worthy events, I think that at various ebbs, the media thinks, well, the bloom is kind of off the rose, that one's gone, and then are genuinely surprised when suddenly it blossoms up. And it has recently blossomed up. In the early days, many of the things that we environmentalists were trying to do was to stop industry from harming the environment, and often worked as allies with government. In the Reagan and in the Bush years, rather often we found ourselves working with industry, with the government more or less as the enemy. And out of those collaborations have come recognitions on the parts of environmentalists that the society is ultimately going to have a very strong manufacturing and services component to it, and we need to work with these people to do it responsibly. And on the part of the business community, a recognition that this green thing is real, and that in some fundamental sense the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. And if they start doing their jobs right, they're going to be producing green jobs. And so suddenly, instead of in this adversarial sort of way, we have a president of the United States making one of his top 3 campaign commitments a dramatic increase in the number of green jobs in America. That is a very dramatic departure from the Richard Nixon administration 40 years ago. Depending upon what has been in the news cycle in the previous day or week, you have greater and lesser degrees of concern with the environment. And that means at times, just because 5 other non-related to the environment issues have dominated the news, there's an economic meltdown, there's a war, there's a riot, there's a bombing, then it fades, and suddenly those things are not on the front page, and we have a report on overfishing coupled with a series of toxic substances being discovered in school children's meals, and the environment leaps right back up to a high level. What I think is important is what's going on at a much more subterranean level. I think beyond any doubt, today the basic core values are vastly more green, if you will, than they were in the 60s and 70s. In part, that's because we've created a generation of environmentally literate students. We've had green schools pop up all over the places. Even the Earth Day contribution in the vast majority of schools in the United States, the 3rd week of April is when you study environmental things and go on field trips and you learn some stuff. And that has now been a common part of the public discussion for long enough that it is, I think, internalized into people's consciousness. I've seen a couple of things that suggest that a far greater number of Americans believe that they have a fundamental right to a safe, healthy environment than to many of the things that are actually enshrined in the Bill of Rights. When I was growing up in the shadow of a paper mill, there was nothing like that. We had the smell of prosperity, the smell of progress. There really was sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide that was damaging our lungs and pitting our cars, but that was simply the way things were. No one really thought to question it. Now, if you find that your kid's health is being harmed, you not only question it, you protest it and you stop it.